All right. I'd like to open the Monday, January 23rd, Leavenworth Board of Zoning Appeals. We do have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the December 19 meeting. If everyone has had a chance to review it, any comments, questions, edits, or recommendation to approve?
Sir, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. No old business, new business. The first item, 2023-02 BZA 727 South 5th Street. That has been deferred until the next meeting in February 27.
Yep, and I'm just gonna state, I think the applicants are here. We did not receive with the application a written description of the variance that's being requested. That's something that's required to be submitted with the application. And I had sent a couple of emails and left a couple of voicemails trying to get a hold of the applicants to get that. And that still has not been received, so that's why we couldn't proceed with the application. So we're still waiting on additional information from the applicant, so that we can get that to you hopefully at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Is that what the majority of the people in the audience are here for? Or
722, 48th Street.
the,
All right, 722 South 5th Street. Yeah, we're continuing that to next meeting, February 27th.
Excuse me if I may, if that young lady sent out emails, can I give her my email so I make sure I get it this time? Because apparently my wife got it and.
Yep, absolutely.
I was gonna say, if you're here for that and we're not going to meet, then you can excuse yourselves and leave, or you can stay for the rest of the meeting.
You guys can go.
Okay. The second item, 4800 South 20th Street. Hold a public hearing wherein the petitioner is seeking a variance of the adopted regulations to allow an accessory structure closer than 5 feet to the primary building in a residential zoning district. Staff report, please.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a variance from section 4.03.e of the adopted development regulations to allow a reduction in the required setback from the primary building. The property is located at 4800 South 20th Street and is occupied by the Church of the Open Door. The property is approximately 10 acres and is zoned R125, which is low-density, single-family residential district. The section of the development regulations states that all accessory buildings in residential districts shall be 5 feet from any primary building on the site. The variance is being requested for the construction of a 12-foot by 20-foot shed between the two back portions of the building towards the north portion of the building. It's in your packet, but you can see here's the property. It's going to be in this back section.
Is that a single building?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious because it looks like it has two addresses on it.
And here's the whole property. 20th Street is here.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any restrictions or requirements for access to this facility? Because it's going to be tucked inside between those two buildings, so it's not going to be part of the main structure. It'll still be independent.
It's going to
But
be an
it-
accessory structure.
But the key factor is that it'll be less than 5 feet away from the main structure.
Correct. And I believe the applicant's here too if you have questions for them.
Okay. And that's the only issue that really, not the height of it or anything, that just the distance,
The setback from the
the
building.
setback distance. Okay. All right.
Is that the only thing that they're looking at that, on that property? They're not talking about going back closer
Yep.
to the.
We'll just wait for any questions or comments. If they're gonna open a public hearing, you'll have a chance to ask, yeah.
Yeah. Does the applicant want to make any comments or provide any additional, if you do, if you go up to the podium.
And state your name and address, please.
I guess I'm happy to answer questions. I don't know if there's any more information. I mean, so
Any questions of the applicant?
Dan, I think I know you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. So, I don't know if there's any particular questions, but,
Can you state your name, please?
I'm sorry, Damien Hefta, pastor at Church of the Open Door. And, we do think that it will basically be almost unseeable. And we could put it where it would be unseeable from anywhere. Right on that east side is a big hill. It's kind of the highest elevation is on that east side. So coming down 20th Street, it really will be just kind of tucked in. Meant to, like I said, to give us some good storage. We need some storage space, and it would just work really, really well for us. We understand it's variance, but, we're hoping it can be approved. We do try to use the facility, like I put in the letter, for public type of events, so we think there's a benefit to the public for us, being able to keep the insides. But not much new information unless you have a particular question.
Do you plan on having doors on both ends of it so
There'll
you
be
can
doors on
access?
both ends of it, and we will actually access it, because in between those two buildings, it's gravelled. It's a nice, clean gravel area. These connector things, both one here, they're both got double doors, so there's a set of double doors here that opens up into here. So we've got a nice, flat, clean, walkway to go from the building into there and bring stuff back and forth.
Are you planning on hooking any utilities up to this? Okay, all right. That's all I had.
Well, one of the conditions we're supposed to find is that the variance wouldn't violate any or adversely affect public health or safety. And I don't know this for sure, but I think one of the reasons for distance between structures has to do with safety, fire, those types of things. What, have you considered that?
Well, yes, I think I could answer this. When we've built these, especially these ladder buildings in the last couple of years, so we've obviously been talking about fire exits, and we have in between these two is really not a fire exit for us. We have an exit door here, we have one here, we have this big one right here, we have one back here. And so there's a number of ways out of the building. Don't really envision anybody would kind of go out between that way. I mean, they could, but it's not one of our stated fire exits.
But as far as the structure that you're talking about putting in there, if it caught on fire and it's close to the building, the fire department has to get in and be able to, fight the fire. And are we talking about dead center, so there'd be like 4.5 feet on each side? Are we just off a foot?
I think it's like two, when you add in the eaves, because you gotta add in the eaves, which, on the other buildings, which are quite high, it's a couple feet. There'll still be a couple feet of access on both. If there was a fire, this thing right here, there's a set of double doors on both. So it is kind of a pass-through. I imagine they would drag a hose, from the parking lot just in between here, for a structure like that. I don't know what the fire department would do, but that would be my guess. There is hose access, driving access, to about this point is easy driving access. This is an access road that we use. Used to have our propane tanks up here, and so we'd have big trucks kind of in this area. This is not a good way to go. You wouldn't take you could take a little fire truck, but you wouldn't want to. So they could get here fairly, or very easily. That would be my suspicion. Like I say, we used to have the propane tanks up there. We hooked up to natural gas a few years ago and moved all those out of it. But that was a common utility ramp up there.
So do you, pardon me, sir, are you complete?
Well, the building that you're proposing to put in there that's a pre-made building, is that, I mean,
No, they're gonna, it's, you know, we're looking at tough shit, they construct it on site, but pretty small shed, and they'll come in and, yeah, that's what I was wondering, if they pre-made, it would be difficult to place it in there, but they don't, they look at it, so they won't have any problem getting in there with their pickup trucks and their 2x4s, and they'll construct it on location.
so they could build it 10 by 20 instead of 12 by 20? And if they did that, would it be satisfy the regulations as far as distance between the?
As I understand it, we'd have to go to 8 foot. 8 foot width would be in the, and to get the 200, I know we can do a 240 square foot without, it's just an accessory structure. And we'd like to get that 240 square foot, because we can use it. So if we went with an 8 foot wide, it would be like an 8 by 30, which, is doable, it's just not as usable. And so,
It says that the space measures 20 feet
20 feet?
between the buildings.
20 feet between the buildings, there's a 1 foot eaves.
12.
And so if you take that out, that gives us 18 feet. And if you need 5 feet on both sides, then we're down to 8. If we get the variance, I guess we would have, literally, from the wall to wall, we're gonna have 4 feet. It'll be 4 feet wall to wall. But the eaves, and these are pretty tall buildings. The eaves are 11 feet high, so
They're gonna be much taller than
they're
this,
much
than
taller
this shed,
than the structure, yeah, those eaves are.
but you can still walk underneath it.
Oh, yeah. So we would have 4 feet wall to wall.
Is it the plan to center it so that you would have 4 feet on each side?
We can do whatever you guys want. We're happy to center it, we're happy to offset it, so one side has 6 feet and one has whatever. It doesn't matter to us.
Well, I have a question for Julie then.
Well,
The approval, or the approval of the variance to be less than 5 feet can be anywhere from basically the eaves to the,
The whole building,
to the building, or do we have to specify?
the whole building is the primary structure, so the 5 foot setback is from any point.
Any point, right?
So, yep, if you were to approve it, probably how I would word then is that it's approved as presented, instead of specifying 4 feet on each side.
That's
just-
what I was getting.
Yeah, so I would use the words as presented, and, it'd be included in your discussion that you want it centered with 4 foot between the walls. So our regulations require us to measure from the furthest point of the structure, so in this case, the eaves. But like he stated, the actual walls will be 4 feet apart, so that would be part of your approval.
worried about
however
the
you choose that.
access.
Yes,
In and
Yeah.
out.
yeah.
And I'm also assuming that it's a standard building permit that he will be getting, and that one of the city code enforcement will be observing the construction and then issue him the permit afterwards, so. Choice of materials and all of that will be taken care of. Okay, we don't have to specify anything about non-flammables or anything like that in there, right? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
no, actually, Ms. Hurley answered my question. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of the staff?
No.
All right, then I'd like to open the public hearing, and anyone in the audience who would like to either speak for or against, please come up to the podium and state your name and you make your comment. And if none, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners. Okay. I think most of
So
my,
let's say, sake of argument, I can't get over the 5 feet in between each. Would the proper way to, is it to approve the variance and then put a restriction on it? Or once we approve the variance, they've got the 4 feet on either side, so we'd have to say no, and they'd have to resubmit?
Correct.
Okay.
So the variance is going to address just one side or both, depending on what qualification we put or restriction we put on that 5-foot clearance.
If you do as presented, it would be as he presented it.
Meaning it would be a 12-foot wide building, and we could restrict that they have to center it and have
They'd have
4
to
feet on
center it.
each, but we can't say they have to have 5 foot on each, which means they'd get a smaller building.
Yeah, because we do have the language, in granting a variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premise benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect, So at that point, that's where you could say, we've gone through each of the criteria that we voted on. Now we're imposing the condition that it be
Condition.
centered in that area.
Okay.
Between the two existing walls.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess that was the same concern I had, because as presented would be verbally, there really wasn't a drawing that showed it.
Yeah,
In
so that's where
place
you
and
can
centered.
put that the condition would be that it be centered between those two existing walls in that kind of courtyard type area.
I noticed that the courtyard in the very next building over is much wider. But I don't have any numbers on that. Do you happen to know what that distance is? The middle one?
I think the middle one,
Is there a measuring tool on that?
next one over is a wide one.
It could be because it's an aerial photo and it's distorted a little bit.
Yeah, and with shadows and roofs and stuff, it's, we try not to judge on. Yeah, it's probably the same. Yeah, I think I agree, it kind of looked wider the way it's narrower and then it widens out, it kind of gives the impression that it's wider, but I don't think that it is.
Okay. All right. Just a question. Okay.
I'm good. I don't have anything.
I think I have everything that I need, I believe.
Okay. All right. Well, we will go ahead with the voting then. A request for a variance may be granted upon the finding of the board that all of the following conditions have been met. The board shall make a determination on each condition, and the findings shall be entered into the record. A, that the variance requested arises from such condition which is unique to the property in question and is not ordinarily found in the same zone or district and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. Commissioner Horvath?
Yes.
I agree.
I agree. That the granting of the permit for the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
Yes.
Agree.
Agree. That the strict application of the provisions of the development regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application.
Yes.
Agree.
Agree. That the variance desired will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare.
Yes.
Agree.
Agree. And finally, that the granting of the variance desired will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the development regulations.
Yes.
Agree.
Agree. In granting the variance, the board may impose such conditions, safeguards, and restrictions upon the premises benefited by the variance as may be necessary to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood, and to carry out the general purpose and intent of these development regulations. Are there any such conditions or safeguards the board wishes to add? The one that I would like to do is approval subject to the location as presented and that it be centered in that space.
Which means it won't stick out beyond the edge of the building. It'll be inside, it'll be tucked in.
Yes.
That'd be a condition, and that it be centered.
Yeah, centered between the two existing walls.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's.
I agree.
Those would be the two criteria that I would like to
Okay,
ensure are added.
you got those, Julie? Okay. Any others or? And we don't need to add that it also complies with the building permit process and all of the
No,
rules and
that's-
regulations
That's a
that,
given, and
okay. All right, the variance is approved, subject to those conditions.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Any other business?
we do not have any other business. We will have a meeting in February. It'll be February 27th. So we'll send out information prior to then. And we'll see you next month.
All right. Any other issues, or do I have a recommendation to adjourn?
Sir, I make a motion for us to adjourn, for the
Second.
board to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.